There's no sound.
There should be. Let me know if you can hear me now. Okay, so we're ready to go ahead and get started. So good evening. Welcome to Senior College Planning Night. This is one of those really ultimate events in terms of the college planning program that I'm involved with here, because this is actually the last scheduled meeting I have specifically just for seniors. And so it's interesting because next week I'll have a freshman college planning night. So it seems like the cycle starts over pretty quick here. But for those of us that are at this stage, I'm sure we've already come to the realization that, yeah, we are reaching an important stage here, and there's going to be some important steps that take place here in the near future that are exciting and challenging, a little scary to some degree. But part of our purpose tonight is to provide you with an opportunity to really have some of those questions answered, so that what's coming forth is a little bit less intimidating or scary than it otherwise would be. So let's begin that process with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you are a God that's with us through all the times, the exciting times, the challenging times, the difficult times, the fun times. And Lord, getting ready for college is all of the above. Bless us, God, now this night as we talk about important decisions and plans to be made, and give us wisdom as we seek to encourage these young people to grow into everything that you've created them to be. Bless us now as we encourage and support them so that they can accomplish your will in their lives. In your name, amen. Okay, so here we've got a little bit of a set of topics that we're going to cover tonight. I can get my clicker to work here again. Okay, and it looks like I'm not getting the PowerPoint to move one way or another. That's odd. It worked just a second ago. Okay, let me reset this here just a second, everybody, and I'll be with you again. Let's reload this and see if we can try again. Here we go. Okay, so I need to restart the screen share though. I also want to make sure that we're still recording. Looks like we are. Okay, sorry about that. All right. So these are the topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. Just starting from the very beginning of where we're at in our decision-making process for this year with our students. A lot of important questions to think about and a lot of facets of each of these topics to talk about. If you've got any questions about anything, feel free to raise your hand as we go along. Those of you that are online, feel free to drop something in the chat as we go along. Obviously, the first consideration we're here about is not only recognizing that education pays, both in terms of available income that it provides and job security that provides as you're moving up the education ladder and that sort of thing, but also the fact that we're really here as a Christian school to help these young people use the gifts that God's given them and help them develop in everything God created them to be. And so for a lot of them, that's going to be a 4-year college experience. For some of them, it's going to be more than 4 years. For some, it's going to be 2 years. For some, it might be something else. Our real purpose is just making sure that we're providing them for all the opportunities to be who God created them to be. And that's ultimately what we're really here for. I like to start with talking about, as we're going through this process, what are colleges looking for? And if you've gone through this process with us for the last few years, you'll know that one of the first things I talk about is the fact that colleges are looking for graduates, but they're not looking for high school graduates. They're looking for college graduates. Their whole intent is to make sure that the people that they bring into their campus as freshmen have a very high likelihood of walking out the door 4 years later with a degree in hand, because that's one of the key ways that their institution is ranked against other institutions. And so if they're in a situation where they're not being successful in preparing graduates, that's going to be a major red flag for them, and obviously present all sorts of recruitment issues, notwithstanding the fact that you bring in 5,000 freshmen and you only end up with 3,000 seniors. Your business office is not going to like that too well. So there's just some real basic elements there that are key. Now the element that the colleges are challenging with is, okay, so how do we determine who graduates are going to be? And that's a big part of what our program here is built around, is making sure that we're providing opportunities for kids to be successful in a high school setting, be successful academically, be successful socially, emotionally, et cetera, so that there's all sorts of indicators that they're going to be ready and successful for a college experience as well. So yeah, GPA is certainly a part of that, having a good grade point average, particularly now that we're talking about so many schools being test optional. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go along further, but recognize that if you're looking at an application that's going to be test optional, then that college has got to have something else to look at. They're going to be looking at something else if they're not looking at test scores. The first thing they're going to be looking harder at is going to be the GPA, in addition to the fact of being pretty deliberate about what courses are being taken and what sort of program the student is participating in. So all those elements become key. Now for your kids, that process is pretty much wound down, unless they're at that point where, if they can bump the GPA 1/10 of a point or so, they could get into another scholarship category. That's about all that's left now that they've already got 6 semesters under their belt, and essentially there's only going to be 1 more semester they could get under the belt before they have to make an acceptance and application and so on. So that those elements are pretty well set. The thing to talk about when we're looking at the standardized test score issue is really the fact that first of all, we need to recognize that the schools that are making quite a splash about being test optional are typically only test optional in application. They're not test optional in terms of scholarships. So that means if you're looking for some funding sources and that sort of thing, the scholarships are still going to be heavily testing based. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing to keep in mind is that many schools that are going test optional will then also say, okay, but if you choose not to submit a standardized test, then we'd like to see an essay. Then we'd like to see a personal interview. Then we'd like to see XYZ. So recognize that again, their future is based on the fact that they're going to be bringing in some students that are going to be successful. If they can't have test scores to help determine that, they're going to be looking elsewhere. And so there are some of those other elements that students are going to need to consider participating in if they're not going to submit test scores. Another key thing is just what did you do outside the classroom? And we've talked about the fact that our program is intent to provide opportunities for kids to get involved in activities, to be leaders in activities, to get involved in community service, to get involved in making a difference in multicultural settings and so on. A lot of those sorts of elements are very important and attractive to universities, and particularly highly selective schools who are really at that point of recognizing that, you know, they get tens of thousands of applications every year, and you know, distinguishing between a lot of top-notch students is a challenge. And so they're really looking for some other internal attitudes and some real internal character that sets a student apart from someone else. And so they're not looking for, you know, a kid that says that they want to go into medicine because, you know, they want to make the world a better place. They're looking for a kid who wants to go into medicine to the point where they've already participated in some pretty significant programs, pre-professional programs, some sorts of service activities that are specifically medically related. Or, you know, if they're interested in going into business management, they want to see kids that have maybe started a business or been involved in managing or operating a business already. So they're looking for those sorts of relative intangibles that kind of give them a peek at the inner workings, the passions of these students. And so those sorts of experiences are key as they're taking a look at individual students. So some things to think about, particularly in terms of what is it you're going to put on your resume. And you know, there's still time for some of those sorts of things. So consider that if there's still some things for you to work on in that regard. Pros and cons of a two-year school. You know, two-year school is a good option for a lot of people. And I'm glad that we've got a good two-year school right here in our community. And it does certainly provide all these sorts of benefits. There are some differences as we take a look at the characteristics of a two-year school versus a four-year school. And some of that has to do with, you know, obviously a little bit more limited curriculum because they're only dealing with primarily programs that are going to be satisfied with a two-year degree. Or providing just an associate's degree for students to move on to a four-year baccalaureate. The workload is typically not as challenging as you would find at a four-year university, particularly a more select private university. And students are typically not as involved. There's not so much of a campus culture because there's not that kind of campus life that you experience at a two-year school versus a four-year school. So it's really a lot more, feels a lot more like a high school experience. You just go and take classes and go home, and it's a little bit different kind of experience. For some kids, that's perfect. That's exactly what they're looking for, and that works great, and that's super. In other cases, that doesn't quite fit the bill. The key thing that I like to make sure kids understand as they're going into a two-year institution is where do you want to end up? Because the reality is that the percentage of kids that begin at a two-year school that end up with a bachelor's degree is less than 10%. Now, some of that legitimately is because a lot of the schools that go to a lot of the kids that go to a two-year school don't need a four-year degree. So obviously that's legit. But the reality also is it's a lot tougher to go to a two-year school, complete that associate's degree, and then go on to a four-year program. Because it's awful easy just to be done after the 2 years and think, oh man, I can just go ahead and do this now. I don't want to do another 2 years of school. I'm just going to go start and start this job over here. Unfortunately, you know, 10, 20 years down the road, they're not looking at that as being such a great idea anymore. Whereas you go to a four-year school, you know, that the culture, the momentum is we're here for 4 years. We're here to get a bachelor's degree. And so it's easier to ride that wave of momentum to that success if you start at a four-year school versus a two-year school and then making a transfer. So that's part of what's behind those statistics, but the reality is it's a pretty small percentage that make it through a four-year program from a two-year school. College visits, we've got some handouts and some specifics about things to talk about on college visits, but just some key things to go through. Hopefully now your students have made some visits. Maybe they're making second visits now to just kind of confirm some things. But some key things to take a look at is, you know, be sure to take more than just the official tour. Try to you know, hang out in the dining hall is usually the best place to really know what goes on, because you're not going to hang out in the dining hall for more than about 15 minutes before everybody's going to know that you're not a student there and that you're visiting. And so it's not hard to strike up conversations with kids in that kind of a setting, with students in that kind of a setting, and just ask them some questions about the school. What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? You know, because you get the official tour and you get the idea that obviously this is nirvana and everybody would want to be here because it's a perfect place. Well, we all know that's not true. So, you ask some of those tough questions, like, what is it that you don't like about this school? And obviously there's going to be things that are, unfortunate about any institution. You just need to weigh how significant is that issue for the program I'm looking for, or for the experience that I'm looking for. So, do that by talking to the right people. Talk to whoever does the teaching. Talk to, talk to who the professors are, hopefully, although that's tough at some larger institutions, that sort of thing, because their participation, particularly in the hallways of campus life, is typically pretty limited. This is where you'll run into some distinctions between a public school and a private school. And we'll talk about this in a little bit in more detail, but I was just talking with a group of kids today that were visiting with one of our college reps. I remember doing a college visit to an institution. It was Valpo, and I had a son going there, and so he was given the tour. We had a dozen or so kids from here at Rockford Lutheran that went just to see Valpo. And he took us through the engineering building, and one of the professor's doors happened to be open. He poked his head in and say, "Hey, Professor Bubnick, these are some kids from my high school. Would you be willing to talk to them a little bit about engineering?" And he just put down what he was doing, walked out, and just stood there and talked with us about 20 minutes about why he loved teaching engineering at Valparaiso University. So, that means a lot. If that's the kind of environment, that's the kind of culture that's meaningful to you, that's a huge experience, and that's a very telling experience to help kind of shape your understanding of the culture of that school. So talk to whoever does the teaching. Obviously, like I said, talk to students. Take a look at the facilities where you're going to spend most of your time. Okay. The reality is nowadays, depending on what program you're going into, you might not be spending all that much time in the library. So you might want to visit the science lab if you're going into a med program. You're going to visit the engineering building if you're going into that kind of a program, or visit the science building or the nursing building, that sort of thing. Make sure you spend some time taking a look at those facilities and compare what you see and how you think it'll fit with what it is that you really want to dig into. Talk to financial aid people. We're going to talk a little bit about financial aid tonight. We're not going to do a lot of that because we had a presentation on it a couple weeks ago. Feel free to take a look at that on our website if you like to. It's recorded and posted there. Talk about the specifics of financial aid and what the opportunities are at that school, and hopefully after you've already made application, you got your FAFSA filled out at this point, you're starting to get complete packages back from schools. So you not only have your acceptance letter, you also have your proposal for scholarship aid and that kind of thing too. Take a look at research program opportunities that are available there at that school. That becomes a real key for the next step. Realize that the step that you're taking into this college experience is obviously preparing you for the next step in terms of your launch into a career. Research opportunities that are available at the college level are a big way to get a leg up in terms of job applications and job opportunities 4 years later, because that sort of experience is in many fields what a lot of job positions are looking for or would benefit from. They're also looking at the opportunity to just kind of evaluate the student. Did they just go to school and take classes and do it just what they had to do to get a degree? Or did they really go above and beyond and get involved in some research opportunities and really demonstrate some extra motivation and dedication to this career and so on? Those sorts of things are going to catch attention of future employers. So look and see what sort of research opportunities does this university afford. Take a look at placement acceptance rates. One of the things that's really going to be key is nowadays, so many more careers require more than just a 4-year degree. So let's talk about what's the placement rate into med school or into a nursing program or into law school or into XYZ. Get some specific hard numbers of what that looks like, so that you got kind of a read on, okay, does this school really offer the opportunity that's going to get me through an MCAT and so on. Those are some things that you definitely want to get some specifics on if you're looking at a career that's going to be longer term. One of the things I'll talk about too in that regard is There are a lot of different opportunities to evaluate at the colleges in terms of how they offer their programs. A lot of schools will have a direct admit program. Now, to understand what that is, you need to recognize that when you apply to a college, you're applying to that school. After you're at that school, there most typically will be a requirement that you apply for entrance into your program. So for example, I applied to Concordia University, Nebraska to attend that university. But before I was done with my sophomore year, I had to apply to the secondary education program. So, and if I would have applied to that secondary education program and not been accepted, now what? Yeah, good question. I'd have to change to another program or something like that, et cetera. You know, that obviously didn't occur in my case, but there are situations where someone will go to a particular university and then they'll apply to the pre-med program, or they'll apply to a nursing program or a physical therapy program, that sort of thing, and might not make it into that program. Well, now where do we go with this 2 years of education that I have? Can I shift gears at this school, or am I going to have to drop here and go off at something else, et cetera? It gets really messy. So you want to talk about, you know, what sort of alternatives are there to that? Well, the direct admit program is one of those alternatives. A lot of schools will have a program where they'll say, you know, you want to come here for physical therapy. And I use that career because of the fact that used to be that was a bachelor's program, then it was a master's program, now it's a doctoral program. So you want to go into physical therapy, a direct admit program will say, okay, you're directly admitted into this whole program, and we offer the entire program. By the time you're done here, you'll have your doctorate, you'll have everything you need to get the certification that you need to be a physical therapist. It's a done deal. And that's kind of laid out for you as you enter that university at the beginning of the game. Now, the other advantage to those kind of direct admit programs, going to one school that can take you from beginning to end in that particular career, is that in many cases they can kind of shrink the time frame down that's going to be involved with that, because you can start doing some of your grad work while you're still there on your 4th year, and you can start doing some of your doctoral work while you're still there for your 5th year and 6th year, that sort of thing. So that can squeeze some of those types of college experiences down in terms of time frame, and therefore obviously in cost as well. But those sorts of experiences are available only at schools that offer that kind of direct admit program. So if you're looking for something that's going to involve more than just a bachelor's degree, those are some important things for you to take a look at and to kind of investigate. One of the things that I talk about too, as we're taking a look at college visits, is the whole idea of distance. And I know it's sometimes a difficult issue to think about, you know, your kid being hundreds of miles away and that sort of thing. That can be part of the growing up process. And for some kids, that's really going to be helpful. It's not for everybody, but don't be afraid of it. When I went to college, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I went to college at Concordia University in Seward, Nebraska. It was about 900 miles away. And that was back in the days when the speed limit was 55. It was an 18-hour trip. And my folks dropped me off in August, and I went home at Christmas. And, you know, that was good for me. I grew up a lot during that time. I kind of think my parents did too. Again, it's not for everybody, but don't be afraid of it. That can be a really great experience. It can be a really great experience. So consider that. One of the things that I heard was, as I was taking my kids around and doing college visits a number of years back, one of the university presidents talked to us parents and said, take special attention to the culture of the school that your child chooses, because they need to recognize that the culture of that school will change them. This is going to be a place where they're going to be spending at least 4 years, 10 months out of the year, 24/7. That experience, that community, the culture that they exist in during that kind of a time frame, which is a particularly formative stage of life, will change them. And so I ask students when they're thinking about that, okay, what do you want to look like 4 years from now? And is this the culture? Is this the school that's going to take you there? So just think about that. Obviously, you're going to be looking at things like campus size and location. affordability, acceptance rates. And I usually talk to kids about make sure you look at different tiers of schools that you want to apply to. Some of your schools, this is my dream schools where I'd really love to go. It's going to be really hard to get in there, but you know what, let's just go for it and see what happens. I'll do my best. Here's some schools that are going to be a challenge to get into, but I'm pretty sure I can do that. These are going to be, pretty doable. And then I've got some others that are just a fallback plan. If this doesn't work out, I know I can get in here, even if it's February, March, or April. They'll still have room. I can still get in. So think about it in those sorts of tiers, and then that kind of takes into account all these issues of acceptance rate and your ability just to get there. Again, the personality of the school, majors offered, obviously, and that's where it comes back into what we talked about before with things like direct admit programs and those sorts of things being offered as well. There was a poll that was done a long time ago about 5 essential elements of well-being. What does a great life look like? You talk about a life that has purpose and key to social relationships in your life, and having a good financial situation, and having a great engaging community, and just your own personal physical well-being. I talk to kids about, take a look at the universities that you're thinking about. Do those universities fit what you think a great college life will look like? Will that university experience provide you with the kind of purpose that you're looking for in terms of what you want to do with your life and your future career? Is it going to provide you with the social experiences that you want? Is it going to be financially manageable for you? Is it going to provide a community that's going to be a place where you're going to like and enjoy living for 4 years or more? And is it going to provide you with a place that you're going to be healthy and energetic and be able to get things done that you need to get done, that sort of thing. So there's just some really helpful perspectives there to take and apply to what this college setting is going to look like for you. Some other indicators that came from that same research from Gallup, and this is something I did with Purdue University. What are some really 6 key indicators that indicate the quality of life that you're likely to experience at this university? And these were the top 3. At least one professor who made me excited about learning, but only 64% of people experience that. Professors that cared about me as a person, only 27% of the people surveyed experienced that. Only 22% experienced a mentor who encouraged them in their goals and dreams. And only 14% experienced all 3 of these that are considered key emotional support elements for a kid while they're at college. So, these are some things we want to look for, because that's what emotionally keeps us moving and keeps us functioning effectively in a college setting. Some other have to do with experiential learning elements. Only 32 experienced a long-term project taking the semester or more to complete. 30% had an internship. 20% were extremely involved in extracurricular activities organizations. Only 6% of graduates experienced all 3. Those kind of experiential learning elements are key, again, to a good quality educational experience. And yet, in many institutions, a huge, vast majority of students don't experience those 3 elements. I want to pick up again on this idea here of internship. That really is something that you want to be key at looking at. We talked a little bit before about what sort of things do you want to zero in on as you're taking a look at a school. The internship, in addition to the research that we talked about before, is really a key, because those summer internships, or in some cases they can go longer than that, depending upon what your school provides and how their program is set up. They can provide some huge opportunities for people in terms of future jobs. I speak to Valpo University again because I've been there, been more involved with their program and that sort of thing. They have a very well developed internship program, internship fair. And because they've got a pretty good reputation throughout the country, have some really big name corporations that come there seeking Valpo interns. Well, when you have the opportunity to do an internship with, ArcelorMittal or TI or Caterpillar or Google, et cetera, that gives you a huge leg up in terms of future job opportunities with those firms as well. So look for schools that provide that sort of experience, because that is certainly a key. Now, again, the challenge is we see a lot of schools, a lot of students don't experience those types of things. One of the things I want you to think about, and I'm going to reference here some research that was done by the Lutheran Educational Conference of North America. And in particular, they were trying to make a distinction between Lutheran universities and state flagship universities. So state flagship, you're talking like your U of I, Urbana-Champaign, your UW-Madisons, those sorts of places. I want you to think about it though, in terms of not just a comparison of Lutheran universities with flagship universities, but public universities and private universities, because that's really the character that comes through in this research. You know, what are the intangible benefits that you're going to be seeking, the intangible benefits that you considered when you brought your student here? Is that still a part of what you want to consider and seek as you're making some final decisions about the college experience for your kids? One of the things to think about is the fact that there's some value to the name that's on a diploma. But the name that's on the diploma is not near as significant as the positive experience that was behind that name. A lot of kids find that the name that's on the diploma will be helpful in terms of getting that first job opportunity, and that can certainly be the case. But if that wasn't a positive experience for them over those course of those 4 years, that the name on that diploma is not going to make up for the fact that it just wasn't as fulfilling of a college experience as they really were seeking. The other reality is, once you're in the job field, once you're in the career and out in the field and practicing, there from then on, your opportunity for mobility and promotion is going to be solely based on your job experience. Very few people are going to look back 5-10 years later, and when they're making the decision about who to hire, they're typically not going to make that decision based on where you went to college. They're going to be basing that decision on what was your last 5 years experience at the place you were working at before. What can you show us that you've done those 5 years that you've worked there that would prove to us that we should hire you here? So the reality is the characteristics that are key to that positive collegiate experience are not necessarily so much tied to the name that's on the diploma. So that's why, and I'm just kind of buzzing through these slides here. Take a look at them, read them as we're going. We're going to be posted by the time we get the recording and everything set in the next couple of days anyway. But the key is, you know, there's a difference in the level of personal relationship you have professors at a private university. And, you know, there's a different kind of relationship in terms of mentoring that takes place at most private universities. So, you know, look for those sorts of experiences and particularly take into account the fact that you know, we're talking about what these 4 years of experience are going to look like, and what is it that's ultimately going to be important is you know, the type of culture your student is experiencing, the type of support that they have, the kind of experience that they have that's going to launch them into a successful career. So just some intangibles there to take a look at as you're making some final evaluations of different schools. We'll talk a little bit about resumes. We've got a form here that's available. It's available in the counseling office for kids to pick up. If they need a recommendation, we ask for a resume, have some questions that I ask them to fill out for me so that I've got some more things to go by in terms of specifics that they've experienced and what they're about, so that I can write a little bit better resume. But have that sort of thing ready to take with you as you're doing things like college visits. Dropping that off in various places is just another opportunity for people to get to know a little bit more about who you are. So take that along with you in a college visit, drop it off, that sort of thing. As we're talking about some of the distinctions between schools, the whole early decision, early action process is something I want to make sure that people understand as well as you're comparing different school offerings. Both of these have to do with obviously getting your name in the hopper early and getting some answers back early as to issues of acceptance at a university. There's another form about this. I explain that out in the packet there if you want to pick that up. The key is that early action plans are non-binding. Okay, basically an early action plan says you need to get your application in by this date. If you get it in by this date, and it's usually something like October 15th, November 1st, something like that. If you get it in by that date, we will get you a decision back by, end of November, something like that, for example. The advantage of that is if you're in, then you know you're in and you're done if you choose that school. If you don't get into that school, it's still only November. You've got lots of time to apply to other places. That's the advantage of early action. Okay. Early decision is binding. Okay. Early decision means this is the school I really want to go to. It's hard to get into. And so I'm going to go for it early because then all the seats are empty. But if I'm going through an early decision process, if they accept me, I'm going there. And I'm done applying and I'll rescind my applications that I've sent out to other places because this is where I want to go. So you can only apply to one school at a time, early decision, because you're acknowledging that if you get accepted there, you will go. The one caveat for backing out of that is if they don't offer you a financial aid package, it's going to enable you to attend there. So that's kind of the only out. But the idea of early decision is it's a good way to get into a school that's hard to get into, but you know that's where you want to be. If you get accepted, then you're good. If you don't, you've still got plenty of time to search out other institutions. Okay, questions on that? That's kind of a tricky thing. So here's a general timeline I kind of lay out for seniors to go through. They should be really finalizing their college application selections at this point, and getting those applications in. And we do, I really encourage some kids to get that done as soon as possible. Recognize that it is an opportunity to be retaking some testing if necessary, although we're getting at the edge of the window for that. We really need to have those test results back in December if they're going to do us any good. The scholarship application process has now begun because FAFSA opened October 1st. So if you're sending college applications in, you need to have your FAFSA done as well, because those schools are going to want to send you your financial aid package along with your acceptance letter. You're going to want to get your financial aid package along with your acceptance letter so that you can do an apples comparison of all the schools that you're accepted at. So that's really the throes of what we're in right now. And we've got a pretty high percentage of our kids that have already turned in college applications. I've got quite a few kids that have done Common App. Just so you know, I met with all the seniors back in August, and we started the Common App. All of them started a common application. Now, some of them decided not to finish it because the school they're going to doesn't take Common App. Common App is accepted at over 900 universities in the country. So it is an easy way to fill out one application and apply to a number of different places, but it's not accepted everywhere. So some kids didn't finish it because they didn't need it, but a lot of kids did finish it, and a lot of kids are doing other applications as well. But that's something that we started collectively so that they would kind of get over the hump of what it's like to fill out a college application. So they got that started. They got an idea of what that feels like and what it's about. And the Common App is very similar to hundreds of other schools' applications as well. The next step of the process is where the scholarship season kind of begins. And it's a little bit earlier now than it used to be. We could kind of say it's kind of spring. It's more like winter. And you'll see that in some of the brochures and materials that we have out here. The Northern Illinois Community Foundation, for example, has their application process that starts here in just a few weeks, and by December they're making decisions and that sort of thing. So it's more of a winter experience of getting scholarship applications in. But the other places that you want to apply for other merit-based scholarship through foundations, through community organizations, through businesses, that sort of thing, that picks up in the winter, November, December, January, in the spring. Question? So early dismissal, early action applications, and regular decision. Yeah. I still encourage kids to get those in by Thanksgiving. Now, obviously, there's places you can turn in applications in February and March and still get an answer by April, and you're ready to go. However, keep in mind that if you're not at the front of the line with the application, you're also not at the front of the line for scholarships at that institution. So one of the things that we talk about, the Thanksgiving date kind of being significant, is in Illinois, they have a MAP grant. And there have been times when the MAP grants run out by Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, if you don't have your applications in time to get your name on that list, yeah, then it's not going to happen. But yeah, RD is just regular decision versus early decision, early application. Yep. Okay. So on the student side, most schools do online applications. Virtually all schools do online applications. Nobody does it on paper anymore. Make sure your files are complete. Make sure you got your recommendations in from teachers. That's where the resume comes in. If you need an essay, make sure you've got that taken care of. I got a little more information on that in a second. There's usually a fee, although a lot of schools will have a time window where they'll do free applications. Right now, I think Western Illinois and Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, are offering free applications right now. So that's certainly a benefit for you. You do typically have to send ACT, SAT scores. Some schools will require that you send that directly from ACT or directly from the College Board to the university. Some of them will accept it off of the transcript that we send. Some won't. So you just have to base that on whatever's going on with school. FERPA refers to whether or not you've, as a student, you're willing to allow your parents to see your grade information when you get to college, that sort of thing. But it also has to do with, have you signed away your rights to see your letters of recommendation? So what I tell students is, yeah, if the college knows that you saw your letter of recommendation before they did, it's not worth much. So the idea is the letter of recommendation should go directly from me right to the university. It's considered to be of more validity at that point because you're not going to see it. Okay, just some key questions here about the college essay, and again, this will be available to you on the website when you see it. A key thing is, choose a specific incident in your life that you can use to describe yourself and what you've learned, because there's a lot of stuff. Don't repeat all your activities. Don't go through, all sorts of other things that are already in other places in your application. Tell your story. Help them to get to see you as a person, and be genuine, be original about that, and just paint a picture for them, because you've already given them 1,000 words. So now paint them a picture and you'll give them 1,000 more. College Essay Guy is a great place to go if you want some help with writing college essays. He's got a lot of stuff that's on the site that's free. He's got some online programs that you can download that there is a modest fee involved, but it's really good stuff, and you can probably get most everything that you need really from what he offers for free. So it's a great, these are some of the things that he offers information about from his site. So it's a great place to look. From the school side of the application process, we're primarily involved in sending transcripts. That's virtually done all electronically. I'll talk about that in a second. There's a school profile, which kind of sends a picture of this is what our school is like in terms of makeup and participation and what we offer in terms of classes and programs and dual credit and all those sorts of things. And there's a recommendation form that typically that I'm responsible for. There's some other, there's typically some schools ask for another type of report form, just give some more information about our school. Keep in mind that there will always be a final transcript that's required for whatever school that you're going to. Okay, and typically a mid-year report, which will include your semester transcripts as well. And so usually we'll be involved in that, or you'll have to send that through Parchment. All of your students have an account in Parchment. We set that up in August as well. That's the primary means by which transcripts are forwarded now in a secure fashion to universities. It's free for your students right now. The state of Illinois pays that for all Illinois students. It'll be free up until August 1st. At that point, they're no longer considered students, they're alumni, and then you have to pay for Parchment. So you want to make sure you get your final transcript sent before August 1st, after your grades are in June. But the other element there is I could tell you stories about kids that decided that, okay, I already got accepted into my university in November. So, my grades don't mean anything now. So I'm just going to enjoy the rest of my senior year until they get your final transcript. And then you get this letter back that says, you remember that application we sent? Yeah, forget it. It's happened. So don't play that game. Again, transcripts are handled through the registrar's office. They're virtually all online now through Parchment. If you require some other type of printed transcript, that would typically go to, let's say, some local organization that has a requirement for transcripts like Kiwanis scholarships, that sort of thing. Give us a week to get that all processed and everything, just so that we've got it stamped and sealed and all that sort of thing and delivered in the time frame that you need. But virtually everything else is electronic. FAFSA is open now. FAFSA is available. That's the federal application for, or the free application for federal student aid. So should be working on that now as you can. Again, there's a lot more information on that on the recording from our program from a couple of weeks ago. But you can talk to us tonight if you have any questions about that. A little bit of information here about just the main areas of aid that are related there. FAFSA is primarily focused on need-based aid. Merit-based aid is where, there's more likely going to be a lot more funding available, particularly if it's for academics and grades and that sort of thing. A lot of opportunities available, obviously, for artistic, athletic scholarships, other ability related scholarships, that sort of thing. But keep in mind that even when you're talking about athletic scholarships, if the grades aren't good, a coach isn't going to make that investment. Because especially if you're looking at a major D1 program, that type of thing, those coaches know that the fresh off years are investments, because virtually those students never play. They never hit the field as freshmen, sophomores. So they're not going to be willing to invest in a student for a couple of years with the hope that they're going to pay off as a junior if there's a chance that they're going to flunk out before they're a junior. So that's why grades are still everything when it comes to athletics, and those people that come and do the recruiting, that's the first question they ask when they stop in the AD's office: what's their grades? So that's another one not to mess with. This gives you a little bit of idea about where some of the money comes from. Scholarships, how much is private, how much comes from the schools. These are the grants that are available that again don't need to be repaid. It's the Pell grants or federal grants, that sort of thing, and the MAP grants, the state grants we were talking about before, are available to you. This gives you a little bit of a visual breakdown of where most of the money comes from. This is a nice graphic from Augustana, so I just use that one because it's clean and kind of paints the picture well for us. But you see where most of the money comes from for tuition. Here's some other resources available for you that are sites for looking into information about what careers your student might be interested in. A lot of information here about scholarships, what college opportunities are available in terms of matching with your particular major that you're looking for, and those sorts of things. So just some other websites that you can use as resources. So we're blessed to have Elizabeth with us tonight as well. She's here from the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. And the Illinois Student Assistance Commission is all about making sure kids get into college. And so this whole thing about seniors and the decisions that they need to make, and the plans that are required for them to successfully get through the college application process, this is what she does all day. So she's got a lot more that she can share with you, and she's really a great resource in terms of answering questions, not only about the application process, but FAFSA and financial aid as well. So thank you for being here tonight.
Don't mind my sticky note. I was just jotting down things that I wanted to add during our presentation. So I just wanted to touch first on visits. So you talked a lot about how they're just highly recommended. I think this is a great way to tell kind of retention. Is your student going to be happy? Talk to students, because if students aren't happy there, they're not going to stay there. And you really want to go to a school that has a good retention rate, because that means that students are having a good experience. Like Don said, it's really important to talk to students, because you're going to get this perfect picture from admissions, because they want you to think that their school is awesome. And it might be awesome, but there's always going to be pitfalls, and you're going to find those out from students. So it's just really important to schedule overnights if you can, meet with them. And then, yeah, meet with professors if you can, attend a class, sit in, see if it's something that's interesting to you. You know, is the class environment something you want to do? Do you want to sit in a big lecture hall? Do you want to sit in a classroom where there's, 5 to 10 students instead? So it's just good to kind of see the differences there. And you do get that just by visiting. And so I visited my school. I love my alma mater. I always talk about how much I love it. And Don shared the graphics up there of like the Gallup research that had been done. And the reason I love my school is because I was in that small percentage of people that had done all those things. And that's part of what made my college experience so great. I had close relationships with my professors. I've had dinner at many a professor's house. But that's because I went to a small school, and that's because that's what I wanted. That's not what works for everyone, but that's why it's just good to kind of see that culture. I just kind of wanted to give you a peek into what that looks like for someone who was recently there. And then I also want to talk about safety schools, batch schools, and reach schools. Don kind of touched on this a little bit when he was talking about different schools that maybe you're sure you can get into, ones that are like a dream school or ones that are safety schools. So I do want to touch just a little bit more on this and say that it can be more than academics. So yes, your academics do play a big role when it comes to whether or not you can get into a school, whether or not it's a safety school, or whether it's, right where you are academically with the majority of students, that's like a match school. But it also comes down to, is this going to be a match financially? Is this going to be a match, distance wise? Is it going to be feasible for us financially to have this person fly back and forth or drive or think about visits like that? So there's a lot that goes into those things, and it's just really good to consider more than just the academics there. However, I will touch on the distance aspect because I think that is really important. I'm the baby of my family, so I don't know if any of you have your baby going off to college. You're the baby, all right. So I know how that's hard on parents. My parents sure let me know that it was hard sometimes. And I was the one that decided to go 4 hours away. Everyone else stayed close. And 4 hours doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it was to them. And I went to a 4-year school right away, 4 hours away, and I couldn't just come home for the weekend. I didn't have a car freshman year of college, so I couldn't just come home for the weekend, and that helped me grow. So I know it's hard, but it did help me grow. It helped my parents grow to let their baby fly the nest, and they're happy that I'm closer to them now again. But it is really important and impactful for their growth. Let's see, what else did I write down on my sticky note? With the FAFSA, so yes, the FAFSA did just open up last Friday on the 1st. If any of you tried to access it on the 1st, it probably crashed on you. So it's doing better now. So if you have not filled out your FAFSA, now is a great time to do that. I do typically recommend getting the FAFSA in and college applications just before Thanksgiving, not only because of that aid running out, but also because once Thanksgiving hits, we're into Christmas season, and all we can think about is, making gingerbread houses and eating cookies. So it's really hard to think about college at that point. So it's just a good idea to get those in right before Thanksgiving. So you don't have to think about it. You could just enjoy the holidays. When it comes to essays, essays are a great place to explain a situation that might come across poorly on a transcript. What I mean by that is if there was a year in your student's life that maybe it was kind of a blip on the radar, something happened, there was an illness, there was a death in the family, something really tough, COVID, maybe something like that. The essay is a place to explain that, to give the university a bigger picture of who you are, to say, hey, this happened and this is how I pushed through, and look at my grades now. Maybe their grades were slipping that year. So that's a really great place to kind of show that as well. And then I have 2 more things I want to touch on. When it comes to scholarships for sports or music or things like that, be paying attention now, because a lot of schools have auditions, have tryouts for things like that during senior year. I've worked with students who wanted to do music and didn't realize they had to audition the year before and couldn't get into the music program. They had to, start the next year. So just be looking into that now, depending on what your student wants to pursue. And then finally, on the last slide, there were a bunch of resources. I just want to add the student portal to that. It's ISAC's. It's an ISAC service. There is a postcard on that table up there. But if you type in ISAC student portal, it should pop up. It has great resources for college planning, financial aid planning. You can compare your award letters on there. You can also, if you're, you want to go to college, but you're not sure what you want to do, it has like interest inventories and surveys to kind of figure out what you might be good at, just to get a bigger picture of those things. Sorry, what was that? So that's the student portal. It's an ISAC service, so ISAC. We have a postcard on the table up there if you want more information on it, but it should pop up if you just Google that. And that is, yes, that is the right postcard. Perfect. That's all I have. I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate your input there. Any other questions that anybody has at this point?
Yet, or you tried to and it didn't go through, or okay. Oh, so was it like the verification email? I wonder if maybe the verification of your email address just didn't go through. I would try to go back in and see if you can log in. If not, the site has been having some issues. You can try to just recreate it and see if it's just been enough time. So you already got the thing signed off then, and okay. Yeah. I would just go back in, see if it has successfully been signed, and that she gets a confirmation email saying that it's gone through and everything. Sometimes the signatures have been having trouble, so it's just the student and then one parent that needs the FSA ID. So, and then if you have any other kids that are going through that process, you can use the same one. So, all right, well then you're good. Yes, to sign. So it would be to sign it electronically at the end of the application. Yeah. Yes, just one though. So the student signature and then one parent. Yeah, so you'll just have to go in and create an FSA ID for yourself as the parent and then sign it at the end. Yep. Yeah, go back in and see if you can just create a new. Okay, I mean, check your junk folders, spam, sometimes it'll go there. If not, you can try to just log in, see if it says that it's matched it. If it has, then you can sign it and you're good to go.
Because if they sent the email, that means they created it. Even though you didn't get the email, it's still there. So go ahead and try and log in and try it. And
yeah, the first was a mess.
Yeah.
Everyone decided to try on the first. It's a little,
which is a good thing.
But,
yeah.
It's a little calmer. So you did it before for a previous child. Okay, so your FSA ID that you use to sign that application is the same thing because it's going to be linked to your social security number. So if you don't remember what it is, that's fine. You can get back into it either with your email, it'll send you a code, your phone number that you linked, or challenge questions that you set. But it's still linked to your social, so it's still the same information you used. So FAFSA, FAFSA.gov is where you'll start for that. Yeah, your social, and then it's going to have like your email and your phone, but if you've already created it, it should be all good as long as you can get back into it. Yep. Yep. It's okay. That's okay. It's a little different, but not too much.
Good question. And keep in mind, and this is the kind of stuff that Elizabeth is here for. And I've already snagged a stack of her cards. So if anybody needs her contact information from here on out, just have your student come in and see me, because she expects you to call her. That's what she does. Yeah. So one thing that I know we spent some time talking about at the financial aid night, I'll just mention real briefly here. I know a lot of folks, think about the issue that we were talking about before of private school versus public school and think, I spent all this money sending my kid to Rockford Lutheran. I don't have money to send them to private university now. Don't believe that. Okay. It's absolutely not true. And particularly if you've got a student that's really taken full advantage of the Rockford Lutheran experience in terms of classes and activities and talent development and service and all that sort of thing. There's a lot of kids that are going to private universities from here for less money than they could have gone to public school. There's some kids that are going to private universities from here for less money than they paid to go here. So it's absolutely doable. Now, every kid, every family situation is different, but don't rule out the opportunity for a really great private school experience because you think that there's no way you're gonna be able to afford it, because it's really not true. It's absolutely doable. So, well, thank you much for being here and for your questions and for sharing your students with us for all these years. We're proud to be able to be a part of that experience for you, and certainly want to help you kind of bring it home now as you take the final steps of college experience. So we'll be around here for as long as you need for asking any other questions that you have. And for those of you that are checking out the recording, feel free to get in touch with me later on, and I can help you out. And Elizabeth is certainly here for you too. So thank you very much.